22 days from now, do not buy into the idea that you don't need to go out and vote and anything else, because I always want to mention this when I say the trend lines are moving in a really good direction. That's reliant on everybody out there listening to us following through. But, Buck, I could not be more optimistic 22 days from the election about the onslaught, the red tsunami that I believe we are going to see.
The Democrats are panicked, right?
Yes.
So that's fantastic. That's where we want them to be. You know, there was this Harvard-Harris poll over the weekend, and it was giving me some deja vu, a little bit of a tingle in the brain back a couple of months here, because what have we been saying here on the show?
Yep.
The economy, crime, immigration.
Yep.
The economy, crime, immigration. Just that is the mantra. Hammer that, and the GOP crushes the Democrat contenders in all these places where there's any kind of a competitive race. And the Harvard-Harris poll shows the three issues Americans are most worried about: inflation, economy, jobs, and immigration.
Yep.
So we've been right there. Now, if you look at some specific races, you're also seeing crime being a major mover. But nationwide, economy, inflation, immigration, which it's interesting. We had thought last week, well, crime seems to be the one that has snuck in as right at. It's tough to separate inflation, economy.
Inflation to me is the same thing.
Economy is the
right?
same thing.
Yeah.
So I think economy is one. And that's obviously the biggest single driver. But the top three, really, if you look at this Harvard-Harris poll, are, let's just say, if you take the economy as one, it is the economy, crime, immigration.
Yep.
Sure enough, that is what is actually really moving the needle. And even at Axios, you had this piece, the Democrats' blue state headaches. And it says Republicans are confident they can make unexpected inroads into solidly Democrat turf. This is going into their backyard. This is sneaking into the blue kitchen, Clay, with states like California, Connecticut, New York, Oregon, and Rhode Island all having races within striking distance or even leading by a Republican at present. I love it.
I read all day Sunday, and first of all, it's like we're driving the news cycle, because we told you, hey, Joe Biden having to go to Oregon and California 3 weeks out from the election is a sign that they are panicked by the internals that they are seeing. And I'll build on that Harvard-Harris poll. We've been telling everybody what this election is going to be decided on. Those are the issues that the GOP is focused on. This I thought was really interesting, too. So everybody cares about the economy, inflation, crime, and the border, right? That's the number three top issues, everybody. What are the three top issues that Democrats are focused on? Did you see this? January 6th is number one on the focal point of Democrats. Women's rights is second. Climate change is third. Now, abortion we can argue about. I can understand why that could be a motivating factor for them. Buck, January 6th and climate change is so improbably tone deaf that I feel like the Democrats are trying to tank the election. You saw Biden eating his ice cream cone, talking about how strong the economy was. This was a Marie Antoinette moment. As we've said historically, let them eat cake. Okay, whatever. We're going to accept that it's true because we don't have to be experts on 18th century French politics.
Concerned about, just one more economic one, are you concerned about the strength of the dollar right now?
I'm not concerned about the strength of the dollar. I'm concerned about the rest of the world. Does that make sense?
Can you explain that?
Yes. Our economy is strong as hell. The internal. Inflation is worldwide. It's worse off everywhere else than it is in the United States. So the problem is the lack of economic growth and sound policy in other countries, not so much ours. And that's it's worldwide inflation. It's consequential.
Buck, eating an ice cream cone and telling everybody while you're eating an ice cream cone was a Marie Antoinette moment for Biden. The amount of tone deafness from Democrats and just the extent to which they talk about things that people aren't actually caring about is crazy. It's bonkers.
And here we are in the final stretch where if they had anything, if they had some messaging pivot to make, you would have already seen it. It seems now that their best spokesperson is based on requests. Did you see this over the weekend, Clay? Based on requests from Democrat groups, their best spokesperson seems to be Pete Buttigieg, not Kamala Harris. Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary who went out on parental leave while you had
for a month.
Massive supply chain crisis that was affecting people all over the country. Remember Jen Psaki saying, "Oh, the Peloton that gets delayed. Sorry." Like that was her.
Yeah.
That was her answer. By the way, Peloton stock. That's been a rough one recently.
Yeah, it has.
But here it is. We have Buttigieg saying that the American Rescue Plan essentially rescued the economy, and that's play clip 7. This is the best they can do to try to hold back the wave of realization about what a crappy economic environment we're in.
If you've pumped $3.6 trillion in fiscal spending into the economy, and you're not politically getting credit for it, and inflation is not coming down, how do you argue to the American people that it's actually the best alternative?
Well, because if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't rescued the economy through the American Rescue Plan, we would not have had the 10 million jobs that were created under this president. We wouldn't be seeing some of the lowest unemployment numbers in the history of the republic. We would be faced with the kinds of problems that we were faced with when the president arrived, which was an economy that was facing a very real risk of free fall. We're in a situation right now where demand has come back. Consumer confidence is up. People have more money in their pockets, and an almost record number of Americans are working.
I think the best way to describe this,
none of it.
This is eloquent idiocy. Every single point that he's making there. It sounds good to people who don't really understand maybe what's going on, but every single point he makes is not only easy to refute, it really insults the intelligence of the people watching. The notion that Biden has created 10 million jobs, ending shutdowns that did nothing to save anyone from COVID is not job creation, right? If you pass a mandate, hey, everybody in the service industry isn't allowed to do their jobs. If government says you're not allowed to do your jobs, and then they say, okay, we've decided you're allowed to do your jobs again, that's not job creation. And the fact that he talks about the trillions of spending saving the economy from what? The only thing that was bringing the economy down was the shutdowns. The existential risk to the economy right now in terms of sending us deep into a recession, deep into a housing crash, is the spending, is the inflation actually. What they did created the problem, but they want people to believe that what they did saved us from catastrophe. This is the upside down world that Pete Buttigieg and the rest live in.
What they are still trying to argue is so easy to refute. They didn't create new jobs. They let people come back and do the jobs that they shut down during COVID. That's not creating new jobs. In fact, easily refuted as well by the data, we have a far lower employment rate among eligible workers today than we did in February of 2020. Everything would be better in this country. Every single thing would be better if Joe Biden had not passed a single bill since he got in the White House. If our Congress had just said, hey, we're not going to do anything, inflation would be lower. Everything that Joe Biden has done has made things worse objectively. This is not just me making the argument. You can go look at it. Every bit of economic data is worse than it would be if Joe Biden hadn't done a single thing. The trillions of dollars. And honestly, the only reason, Buck, we're not even in worse shape is because he didn't get the additional $5 trillion passed that he was trying to get done with Build Back Better. I mean, he made poor decisions, but the decisions that he tried to make were even worse. And the only reason we're not in that awful shape is because Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin actually showed a small bit of spine when it came to the original Build Back Better idea.
Well, they weren't completely insane. They were just a little bit insane and actually extracted some concessions. People forget this. Sinema made sure that the carried interest loophole for hedge funds and private equity guys stayed. They were going to get rid of that. So that's a great way to make sure the donor cash keeps flowing to you as a Democrat politician while talking about Republicans are totally owning Wall Street these days. Total nonsense. But the issue of government spending, you and I can't create dollars. Or, I mean, we could try, but the Secret Service would come and arrest us very quickly. We can't create money. The government is the problem behind inflation. There's no other party. There's no other, this is not just a general economic cycle issue.
Yep.
This is government spending. This is failed monetary policy. And when all you have to do, so that's point one. And point two, they'll say, oh, but look at the debt. It took a long time and Trump was spending a lot too. Look at when this kicked off. You can be a coincidence theorist instead of a conspiracy theorist and think Joe Biden comes into office and inflation starts rocketing up just because, Clay, or you can recognize that immediately moving to spend $2 trillion of money that Democrats just felt like spending, given what we had already gone through with COVID, was crazy, and that the Build Back Better plan, and yes, even infrastructure, these things have actually made the single biggest economic problem for people, worse. I mean, the average American family has lost about $6,000 of spending power.
Yeah.
This year alone. That's a lot. That hurts.
That's why the ice cream eating ain't connecting. When Biden's saying, hey, the economy's really strong, yeah, you're not feeling it when you're going to the grocery store or when you're looking at your paycheck or when you're picking up gas. Your family is struggling because of failed policies by Joe Biden, the worst president of any of our lives.
It's true.